Thomas stood by the window of their cottage, watching the rain drip down the glass. His hands trembled slightly as he held the letter that had arrived 3 days ago. Emma was in the kitchen, preparing tea like she always did on Sunday afternoons. The familiar sound of cups clinking and water boiling should have brought him comfort, but today it only made his heart heavier. They had been married for 28 years. 28 beautiful years filled with laughter, quiet mornings, shared dreams, and the kind of love that most people only read about in books. They had raised 3 children in this very house, watched them grow, helped them through heartbreaks, celebrated their victories, and eventually watched them build their own lives in different cities. Emma walked into the living room carrying 2 cups of tea. Her silver hair was tied back in a loose bun, and she wore the blue cardigan Thomas had bought her last Christmas. She looked at him and immediately knew something was weighing on his mind. After nearly 3 decades together, they could read each other without words. "You're thinking too much again," she said softly, handing him his cup. Her voice was gentle, the same voice that had comforted him through job losses, family funerals, and moments of doubt. Thomas took the cup, but didn't drink. He looked at Emma, really looked at her. The tiny wrinkles around her eyes that appeared when she smiled. The way she still tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. The small scar on her chin from when she fell off her bicycle as a child. Every detail of her face was precious to him. "Emma, we need to talk," he finally said. She sat down on the couch, patting the space beside her. Thomas joined her, setting his tea on the small table. He took her hands in his. They were warm and soft, hands that had held their newborn babies, baked countless birthday cakes, and held his hand through every challenge life had thrown their way. "I got the position," Thomas said quietly, "the charity project in South Africa. They want me to lead the medical mission." Emma's eyes widened. They had discussed this possibility months ago when Thomas first heard about the opportunity. A medical organization was looking for experienced doctors to help set up a clinic in a remote village. It was the kind of work Thomas had always dreamed of doing, using his skills to help people who had no access to health care. "That's wonderful news," Emma said, and she meant it. But Thomas saw the flicker of sadness in her eyes. "It's for 18 months, he continued. "They need someone who can commit to staying there, training local medical staff, setting up proper systems. I would need to leave in 3 weeks. The room fell silent except for the rain against the windows. Emma squeezed his hands. "You should go," she said firmly. "Emma, I can't leave you for 18 months. We've never been apart for more than a few days. Thomas, this is your dream. You've talked about doing something like this since we were young, remember? You always said that when the children were grown and independent, you wanted to use your medical knowledge to help communities that needed it most." He did remember. It had been his passion, his calling. But that was before life got busy with raising children, paying mortgages, and building a career at the local hospital. Now at 56 years old, this opportunity felt like his last chance to fulfill that dream. "But what about you?" Thomas asked. "I can't ask you to come with me. Your mother is here, she needs you, and your teaching position at the school, you love those children." Emma smiled, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "My mother has my sister nearby, and the school will find another art teacher. But that village in South Africa, they won't find another doctor like you easily. You have to go, Thomas. You have to do this." Over the next few days, they tried to go about their normal routine. Thomas continued his shifts at the hospital. Emma taught her art classes at the primary school. But everything felt different now. Every shared meal, every evening walk, every moment together carried extra weight because they both knew their time together was running out. Their children called one by one, as news of Thomas's decision spread through the family. Sarah, their eldest, was supportive but worried. 18 months is a long time, Dad. Are you sure Mom will be okay alone?" Michael, their middle child, was excited. "This is amazing, Dad. You're going to change so many lives." Lucy, their youngest, cried on the phone. "I can't imagine you and Mom being apart for that long. You've never been separated." Thomas shared all these conversations with Emma. They talked late into the night, sitting on their back porch, watching the stars. They made plans for video calls and letters. Emma insisted she would visit after 9 months, taking a break from her teaching to spend a few weeks with him in South Africa. But beneath all the practical planning, they both felt the growing ache of impending separation. One evening, as they washed dishes together, Emma suddenly stopped and turned to Thomas. "I'm proud of you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud that you're brave enough to do this. But I'm also terrified of missing you." Thomas pulled her close, soap suds and all. "I'm terrified too. But knowing you support me makes it possible. You've always made everything possible, Emma." The days rushed by too quickly. Thomas attended planning meetings with the charity organization. He got his vaccinations, updated his passport, and packed medical supplies. Emma helped him prepare, making lists, organizing his belongings, ensuring he had everything he would need. Their friends organized a farewell dinner at the local community center. Colleagues from the hospital gave speeches about Thomas's dedication and compassion. Former students of Emma's came to wish him well, bringing drawings and cards. It was a beautiful celebration, but Thomas and Emma both felt the bittersweetness of it all. With only 1 week left, they decided to take a few days away, just the two of them. They drove to the coast, to the same small beach town where they had honeymooned 28 years ago. They walked along the shore hand in hand, talking about their memories and their future. They laughed about their first apartment with the leaking roof. They remembered the day each of their children was born. They spoke about the hard times they had weathered together and how those challenges had only made them stronger. On their last night at the beach, they sat watching the sunset. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, reflecting off the calm water. "Promise me something," Emma said softly. "Anything," Thomas replied. "Promise me you'll do amazing work there. Help those people. Make a real difference. Don't hold back because you're worried about me." "I'll be fine, Thomas. I have our children, our friends, my work. I'll miss you terribly, but I'll be fine." Thomas pulled her close. "I promise. And you promise me something too." "What's that?" "Promise me you'll live your life fully while I'm gone. Take that pottery class you've been talking about. Visit Sarah in London. Don't just wait for me." Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face now. "I promise." They held each other as the sun disappeared below the horizon, both knowing that their goodbye was coming, and neither of them ready for it. The final week arrived faster than either of them imagined possible. Thomas's suitcases stood by the front door, already packed and ready. Emma had insisted on washing and folding every piece of clothing herself, treating each shirt and pair of trousers like something precious. She tucked small notes into his pockets, little reminders of her love that he would discover later. Monday morning began with an unexpected visitor. Margaret, Emma's mother, arrived at the cottage with fresh scones and her famous apple jam. She was 82 years old but still spry and sharp as ever. She hugged Thomas tightly at the door. "You're doing a good thing, Thomas," she said, her voice firm. "My Emma will miss you something awful, but she's strong. We raised her to be strong." They sat in the kitchen, the three of them, eating breakfast together. Margaret told stories about Emma as a little girl, making them all laugh. She talked about Emma's father, who had passed away 15 years ago, and how proud he would have been of Thomas's decision. When Emma's father was dying, Margaret said quietly, "He made me promise something. He said I should never hold Emma back from supporting her dreams or the dreams of those she loved. He said that's what real love is, letting go when you need to, trusting when it's hard." Emma reached across the table and squeezed her mother's hand. Thomas felt a lump forming in his throat. After Margaret left, Thomas and Emma spent the afternoon going through old photo albums. They sat on the floor of the living room, surrounded by memories captured in pictures. There was their wedding day, Emma in her simple white dress, Thomas in his father's borrowed suit. Pictures of their children as babies, toddlers, teenagers. Family holidays, Christmas mornings, birthday parties. "Look at this one," Emma said, pointing to a faded photograph. It showed them in their early 30s, standing in front of their cottage on the day they bought it. Thomas had his arm around Emma's waist, and they both looked so young, so full of hope. "We were babies ourselves," Thomas said with a smile. "We grew up here," Emma replied, "in this house, in this life together." They continued through the albums, laughing at hairstyles and fashion choices, remembering moments they had almost forgotten. Each photograph was a reminder of their journey together, the life they had built side by side. Tuesday brought a visit from their 3 children. Sarah drove down from London with her husband and 2 young daughters. Michael came from Manchester, bringing his partner along. Lucy arrived from nearby Bristol, where she worked as a nurse. The cottage filled with noise and life, grandchildren running through the rooms, adults talking over each other, the kitchen busy with meal preparation. They had dinner together, crowded around the extended dining table. Thomas looked around at the faces of his family and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. This was what he and Emma had created together. Not just children, but good people who loved each other, who supported one another, who had learned about compassion and kindness. After dinner, when the grandchildren were occupied with games, Sarah pulled her parents aside. "Dad, Mom, we've talked about it, and we want you to know that we'll take turns visiting Mom while you're gone. She won't be alone." Michael nodded. "I'll come down every few weeks. We can do video calls too. Keep the family connected." Lucy, who lived closest, added, "I'll pop by regularly, Mom. We can have our girls' nights like we used to." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "You don't have to arrange your lives around me. I'll be perfectly fine." "We know you will be," Sarah said, hugging her mother. "But we want to. You've always been there for us. Now it's our turn." That night, after everyone had gone home and the cottage was quiet again, Thomas found Emma sitting on the back porch in the darkness. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and sat beside her. "You're loved, Emma," he said softly. "By so many people." "I know," she replied. "I'm very lucky. We both are." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds, the rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl. Wednesday morning, Thomas had his final day at the hospital. His colleagues had organized a small ceremony in the staff room. Dr. Patricia Hayes, who had worked with Thomas for over 20 years, gave a speech that made everyone laugh and cry. "Thomas isn't just a good doctor," she said. "He's the kind of doctor who remembers his patients' children's names, who stays late to comfort worried families, who never makes anyone feel like they're wasting his time. South Africa is gaining a treasure and we're losing one." They gave him a leather journal, signed by every staff member, filled with messages of support and encouragement. Thomas was moved beyond words. These people had been his second family for decades. When he got home that evening, Emma had prepared his favorite meal, roast lamb with all the trimmings. They ate slowly, savoring every bite, neither of them wanting the evening to end. Thursday was Emma's last day at the primary school before the term break. Her students, who ranged from 5 to 11 years old, had made goodbye cards for Thomas. Emma brought them home in a large folder. That evening, she and Thomas read through each one. "Dear Mr. Thomas," one card read in wobbly handwriting. "Thank you for going to help sick people. You are a hero." Another said, "I hope you come back soon. Mrs. Emma misses you already." The innocent words of children cut deeper than any adult sentiment could. Thomas carefully packed the cards in his suitcase, knowing he would need these reminders of home during difficult days ahead. Friday morning arrived with gray skies and a light drizzle. Thomas and Emma moved through their routine quietly, both aware that this was their second to last day together. They did ordinary things, grocery shopping, folding laundry, tending to the garden. But every ordinary moment felt extraordinary, weighted with meaning. In the afternoon, they drove to the cemetery where Emma's father was buried. They stood together at his gravestone, and Emma told her father about Thomas's journey. Thomas found himself talking too, thanking Emma's father for raising such an incredible daughter, promising to take care of her heart even from thousands of miles away. Saturday was their last full day together. They woke early and had breakfast in bed, something they rarely did. Emma had made French toast and they ate while watching the sunrise through their bedroom window. "Let's not go anywhere today," Emma suggested. "Let's just stay here in our home together." So they did. They spent the day doing simple things. Thomas repaired the loose handle on the kitchen cabinet that he had been meaning to fix for months. Emma worked in her small studio, finishing a painting she had started weeks ago. They listened to music, old songs from when they first met. They danced in the living room, moving slowly to familiar melodies. In the afternoon, they sat together on the couch, just talking. They spoke about everything and nothing. Emma asked Thomas to describe exactly what his days would be like in South Africa. Thomas asked Emma to promise she would keep painting, keep creating, keep finding joy. "I want you to write to me about the little things," Thomas said, "not just the big events. Tell me about your morning coffee, about the birds in the garden, about the books you're reading. I want to know your days." "I will," Emma promised. "And you tell me everything too. The people you meet, the patients you help, the challenges you face. Don't protect me from the hard parts." As evening approached, they prepared dinner together, moving around their kitchen with practiced ease. They had cooked thousands of meals in this kitchen side by side, and tonight it felt like the most important meal of all. After dinner, they walked through their garden in the fading light. Emma's roses were beginning to bloom, and the vegetable patch showed the first green shoots of summer crops. "I'll take care of everything," Emma said, touching the petals of a pink rose. "The garden, the house, our life here. It will all be waiting for you when you come back." Thomas pulled her close. "I know it will. You've always been the one holding everything together. Emma, you're the strongest person I know." They stayed in the garden until the stars came out, holding each other, both storing up these moments to carry them through the months ahead. Neither of them wanted to go inside, because going inside meant going to bed, and going to bed meant morning would come, and morning meant goodbye. Finally, when the night air grew cool, they went inside. They moved through their evening routine slowly, brushing teeth, changing clothes, turning off lights. They climbed into bed and held each other in the darkness. "Tomorrow is going to be hard," Thomas whispered. "I know," Emma replied, "but we'll get through it. We'll get through all of it because we love each other. Distance doesn't change that." They fell asleep in each other's arms, their last night together for 18 months, neither of them knowing that the goodbye ahead would be even harder than they imagined. Sunday morning arrived too soon. Emma woke first, as she always did. For a moment she lay still, watching Thomas sleep beside her. His face was peaceful, the worry lines smoothed away in rest. She memorized the sight of him, knowing it would be the last time she would wake up next to him for many months. She slipped out of bed quietly and went to the kitchen to make coffee. Her hands moved automatically through the familiar motions, but her mind was elsewhere. In a few hours, Thomas would be gone. The house would be empty. Their bed would feel too big. The mornings would be silent. Thomas appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed in comfortable clothes for traveling. He looked at Emma, and their eyes met with an understanding that needed no words. "Coffee smells good," he said softly. They sat at the kitchen table, drinking their coffee slowly. Neither of them was hungry, but Emma had prepared toast anyway. It sat untouched between them. "What time do we need to leave?" Emma asked, though she already knew. "The flight is at 2. We should leave here by 11 to be safe. 3 hours. They had 3 more hours. The doorbell rang at 9 o'clock. It was Sarah, Michael, and Lucy, arriving together as planned. They had decided as a family to see Thomas off at home rather than at the airport. Private goodbyes, they agreed, were better than tearful farewells in a crowded terminal. The cottage filled with the voices of their children and grandchildren. The little ones didn't fully understand that Grandpa was going away for a very long time. They played with their toys, occasionally running to Thomas for hugs. Margaret arrived shortly after, bringing fresh flowers from her garden. She placed them in Emma's favorite vase and set them on the kitchen table. "Something to brighten the house," she said, kissing Emma's cheek. Thomas's younger brother David came with his wife. Old friends from the neighborhood stopped by with cards and well wishes. The morning passed in a blur of conversations, hugs, and promises to stay in touch. At 10:30, people began to leave, understanding that the family needed time alone for their goodbyes. One by one, friends departed, leaving only the immediate family. Thomas sat on the couch with his 2 young granddaughters on either side of him. He read them a story, one of their favorites, about a brave rabbit who went on an adventure. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was the rabbit now, heading into the unknown. "Grandpa, will you bring us presents from Africa?" the youngest asked innocently. "Of course I will, sweetheart," Thomas said, kissing the top of her head. "And I'll send you letters with pictures." Michael stood by the window, his jaw tight, trying to hold back emotion. He had always been the stoic one, but watching his father prepare to leave was breaking through his usual reserve. Sarah busied herself in the kitchen, helping Emma pack some last-minute snacks for Thomas's journey. Lucy sat close to her mother, holding her hand. At 11 o'clock, Thomas stood up. "It's time," he said quietly. The energy in the room shifted immediately. The reality of the moment crashed down on all of them. This was it. The actual goodbye. Thomas hugged each of his grandchildren, whispering words of love and promising to see them soon. They clung to him, not fully understanding why everyone was so sad. He turned to Michael next. His son, now a grown man of 32, had tears streaming down his face. "I'm proud of you, Dad," Michael said, his voice breaking. "So proud." They embraced tightly. Thomas could feel his son trembling. "Take care of your mother," Thomas whispered. "And take care of yourself. I love you, son." Sarah came next, and she didn't even try to hide her tears. "Call us when you land, Dad, promise." "I promise, sweetheart. And thank you for being such a support to your mom. You're an amazing daughter." Lucy was openly sobbing. She had always been the most emotional of their children. Thomas held her for a long time, letting her cry, stroking her hair like he had when she was little and had nightmares. "I'm going to miss you so much." "Daddy," she said, using her childhood name for him. "I'll miss you too, Lucy. But I'll write to you all the time, and the months will pass quickly, you'll see." Margaret stepped forward next. "You're a good man, Thomas Bennett," she said firmly. "Come back safe to us." "I will," Thomas promised, hugging his mother-in-law. David, his brother, gave him a strong handshake that turned into a hug. "You're braver than I could ever be," David said. "Do good work out there." The children and grandchildren began moving toward the door, understanding that Thomas and Emma needed their final moments alone. One by one they left, calling out final messages of love and support. Sarah was the last to go, looking back at her parents with tears in her eyes before closing the door behind her. Suddenly, the cottage was silent. It was just Thomas and Emma standing in their living room facing each other. Neither of them spoke at first. They simply looked at each other, taking in every detail. The silence stretched, filled with 18 years of shared life, thousands of conversations, countless moments of love. Emma broke first. A sob escaped her lips and then another. Thomas crossed the room in 2 steps and pulled her into his arms. She buried her face in his chest and cried, really cried for the first time since learning about his departure. "I'm sorry," she gasped between sobs. "I promised myself I would be strong." "You are strong," Thomas said, his own voice thick with tears. "You're the strongest person I know. It's okay to cry." "Emma, I'm crying too." They held each other in the middle of their living room, both crying, both trying to absorb enough of each other to last through the separation ahead. "I don't know how to do this," Emma whispered. "I don't know how to be without you." "Yes, you do," Thomas said gently, cupping her face in his hands and looking into her eyes. "You're Emma Bennett. You're a brilliant teacher, an incredible artist, an amazing mother and grandmother. You're going to be fine, more than fine. But I'll miss you every single day. I'll miss you too, every moment. But we'll write, we'll video call, we'll stay connected. And before we know it, you'll be visiting me in South Africa, and I'll show you everything I've been doing." Emma nodded, wiping her eyes. She went to the kitchen and came back with a small package. "I made this for you," she said, handing it to him. Thomas unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a small leather photo album. He opened it to find pictures of them together throughout their marriage. Pictures of their children, their home, their life. On the first page, Emma had written in her beautiful handwriting, "To remind you of what's waiting at home. All my love always, Emma." Thomas's vision blurred with tears. "Thank you," he managed to say. "This is perfect." Emma handed him another small item. It was a sealed envelope. "Don't open this until you're on the plane," she said. "It's a letter. I wrote down everything I want you to know." Thomas tucked it carefully into his jacket pocket right over his heart. They walked together to the front door, where Thomas's luggage waited. He picked up his bags and Emma opened the door. The taxi was already waiting at the curb, right on time. They stepped outside into the bright afternoon sunshine. It seemed wrong somehow that the day should be so beautiful when they felt so sad. At the garden gate, Thomas set down his bags one more time. He took both of Emma's hands in his and looked at her intently. "Emma, I need you to know something," he said seriously. "You are the love of my life. You have been since the day I met you. These 18 months apart won't change that. Nothing could ever change that." "I know," Emma said, fresh tears streaming down her face. "I love you too, Thomas. So much. Go and do amazing things. Help those people. Make me proud. You already make me proud every single day." They kissed, a long, tender kiss that held 28 years of love and devotion. When they pulled apart, both of their faces were wet with tears. "I have to go now," Thomas said softly, though every fiber of his being wanted to stay. "I know," Emma whispered. He picked up his bags and walked toward the taxi. The driver got out to help load the luggage into the trunk. Thomas turned back one more time. Emma stood at the gate, one hand raised in farewell. The morning sun lit her silver hair like a halo. She looked beautiful and brave and heartbroken all at once. "I love you," Thomas called out. "I love you more," Emma called back. Their old playful exchange now weighted with enormous emotion. Thomas got into the taxi. As it pulled away from the curb, he looked back through the rear window. Emma was still standing at the gate waving, growing smaller and smaller as the distance increased. He watched until the taxi turned the corner and she disappeared from view. Only then did he allow himself to break down completely, covering his face with his hands as sobs shook his body. The taxi driver, an older man who had seen many farewells, said nothing. He simply drove, giving his passengers space to grieve. Back at the cottage, Emma stood at the gate for a long time after the taxi disappeared. The street was empty now. The house behind her felt impossibly large and empty. Finally, she walked back inside and closed the door. The silence was deafening. She walked through the rooms, touching things that belonged to Thomas, breathing in the faint scent of his cologne that still lingered. She sat on their bed and held his pillow and cried until she had no tears left. The first night alone was the hardest. Emma went through the motions of her evening routine mechanically. She made dinner, though she barely touched it. She tried to watch television but couldn't focus on anything. Every corner of the house reminded her of Thomas. His reading glasses on the side table, his coat still hanging by the door, the impression his head had left on his pillow that morning. At 10 o'clock, her phone rang. It was Thomas calling from a layover in Dubai. Just hearing his voice made her heart ache and soar at the same time. "How are you holding up?" he asked, and she could hear the exhaustion and emotion in his voice. "I'm okay," she lied. Then more honestly, "No, I'm not okay. I miss you already. How are you?" "I read your letter on the plane," Thomas said. "Emma, it was beautiful." "I cried through the whole thing." They talked for 20 minutes before Thomas had to board his connecting flight. After they hung up, Emma felt both better and worse. Better because she had heard his voice. Worse because the conversation had ended. She climbed into bed and lay on her side, staring at the empty space where Thomas should have been. Sleep didn't come easily, but eventually exhaustion claimed her. Monday morning, Emma forced herself out of bed early. She had taken the week off from school, but she couldn't spend it wallowing. She made coffee, drank it standing by the kitchen window, and tried to figure out what to do with herself. The phone rang again mid-morning. This time it was Sarah. "Mom, I just wanted to check on you. How was your first night?" "Hard," Emma admitted. "But I survived. Do you want me to come stay with you for a few days?" Emma was tempted, but she knew she needed to learn how to be alone. "That's sweet of you, darling, but I'll be all right. I need to figure out how to do this on my own." That afternoon, Lucy stopped by with groceries. "I know you're capable of shopping for yourself, Mum," she said, unpacking bags in the kitchen. "But I wanted an excuse to see you." They had tea together and Emma found herself crying again. Lucy held her hand across the table. "It's okay to be sad, Mum. You don't have to be brave all the time." "I'm just being silly," Emma said, wiping her eyes. "People deal with much worse separations. Military families, for instance." "That doesn't make your feelings any less valid," Lucy said firmly. "You and Dad have been together every day for nearly 30 years. This is a huge adjustment." Over the next few days, Emma received messages from Thomas at odd hours, whenever he could find an internet connection. He had arrived in South Africa safely. The village was remote, even more so than he expected. The clinic was basic, just a few rooms with limited equipment. But the need was enormous, and he was already working long hours. Emma wrote back long emails telling him about her days. She described the garden, the weather, the neighbors who had stopped by to check on her. She told him about the small pottery class she had signed up for, keeping her promise to him. At the end of the first week, they managed their first video call. Seeing Thomas's face on the screen made Emma's heart leap. He looked tired but animated, excited about the work he was doing. "Tell me everything," Emma said, pulling her laptop closer as if she could somehow reach through the screen. Thomas described the village, the people he was working with, the challenges they faced. There was no running water in many homes. Diseases that were easily treatable elsewhere were killing children here. But there was also hope. The local health workers were eager to learn. The community was welcoming. "I wish you could see it, Emma," he said. "It's hard, but it's important. I feel like I'm finally doing what I was meant to do." "I'm so proud of you," Emma said, meaning every word. They talked until Thomas's internet connection faltered and the call dropped. Emma sat staring at the blank screen for a long time afterward. The second week, Emma returned to school. Her students were excited to see her, and throwing herself back into teaching helped. She painted at night, finding solace in the creative process. She started a new piece, something abstract that captured her feelings of longing and hope mixed together. Margaret visited every few days, often bringing food or simply sitting with Emma in comfortable silence. One afternoon, she found Emma in the garden, pulling weeds with fierce concentration. "You're going to pull up the roses if you're not careful," Margaret said gently. Emma sat back on her heels, wiping sweat from her forehead. "I needed to do something with my hands, something physical." Margaret sat down on the garden bench. "Come here, love." Emma joined her mother and Margaret took her hand. "I know this is hard. When Emma's father died, people kept telling me it would get easier with time. I hated hearing that because I didn't want it to get easier. I felt like accepting the pain would somehow be disloyal to his memory." "That's exactly how I feel," Emma said. "Like missing Thomas less would mean I love him less." "But that's not true," Margaret continued. "The love doesn't lessen. You just learn to carry it differently. You'll find your rhythm. Emma, you'll learn how to live with the missing while still living your life." Those words stayed with Emma. She began to understand that adapting to Thomas's absence wasn't betraying their love. It was honoring it by being strong, by continuing to grow and live fully. By the third week, Emma had established new routines. She video called Thomas every Sunday evening, their special time to really talk. She wrote him letters every few days, posting them even though she knew international mail would take weeks to reach him. She found comfort in the physical act of writing, of forming words on paper that he would eventually hold. Michael visited and helped her fix some things around the house that needed repair. Sarah called every few days just to chat. Lucy came by for dinners and they cooked together, experimenting with new recipes. Emma's art students at school noticed a change in her teaching. She seemed more present, more passionate. She encouraged them to express their emotions through their artwork, to use painting and drawing as a way to process feelings. One evening, a package arrived from South Africa. Inside was a beautiful wooden carving of a bird, made by one of the local artisans Thomas worked with. There was also a letter, several pages long, where Thomas described his days in detail. He wrote about the patients he was treating, the young medical trainees he was working with, the small victories and frustrating setbacks. He also wrote about missing her, missing their morning coffee routine, missing her laugh, missing the way she hummed while cooking. Reading his words, Emma cried, but they were cleaner tears now, not the desperate sobs of those first days. She wrote back immediately, telling him about the pottery class where she had made a lopsided bowl that the instructor had kindly called rustic. She told him about the roses blooming in the garden, about their granddaughter losing her first tooth, about the book she was reading. The fourth week brought a small crisis. Emma's car broke down and the repair would be expensive. Her first instinct was to call Thomas to talk through the problem with him. But Thomas was thousands of miles away and had enough to worry about. She called Michael instead, who helped her find a good mechanic and negotiate a fair price. That night, she realized something important. She had handled a problem on her own. She didn't need Thomas to function, even though she wanted him there. The realization was both empowering and sad. During their Sunday video call, she told Thomas about the car situation. "I'm sorry I wasn't there to help," he said, clearly frustrated by his inability to support her practically. "Thomas, it's okay," Emma said gently. "I figured it out. I'm stronger than I thought I was. You are always strong, Emma. I just hope you're not too strong. I hope you still need me a little." Emma laughed through her tears. "I need you more than a little. But I'm learning that I can manage while I wait for you. There's a difference between needing someone and not being able to function without them. When did you become so wise?" Thomas asked, smiling at her through the screen. "I learned from the best," she replied. As the fifth week began, Emma found herself thinking less about counting down the days until Thomas returned, and more about simply living her days fully. She still missed him constantly, but the missing had become a part of her daily experience rather than something that paralyzed her. She took up morning walks, something she and Thomas had always planned to do but never made time for. She walked through their neighborhood as the sun rose, watching the world wake up. The exercise and quiet time helped her feel centered. Her pottery class was going well. Her bowls were becoming less lopsided. She made a set of mugs, planning to surprise Thomas with them when he returned. The act of creating something with her hands, of shaping clay into something useful and beautiful, became therapeutic. At school, she started an after-school art club for students who needed extra support. Some came because they loved art. Others came because they needed a safe, calm place to be. Emma understood both motivations. One afternoon, while working in her studio at home, Emma realized she was humming the same song Thomas used to sing while doing the dishes. She stopped, surprised by the moment of happiness that had crept in unexpectedly. She didn't feel guilty about it. Instead, she smiled. This was what Thomas wanted for her. To keep living, keep creating, keep finding moments of joy even in his absence. That night, she wrote him a letter describing the realization. She told him about the pottery, the art club, the morning walks. She told him that Missy. 3 months passed, then 4, then 5. Time moved in a strange way for Emma. Some days crawled by slowly, each hour feeling like several. Other days flew past in a blur of activity. Before she knew it, autumn had arrived, painting the leaves in shades of gold and orange. Thomas's letters came regularly now, sometimes arriving in bunches when the postal service caught up after delays. Emma kept them all in a decorated box by her bedside. On difficult nights, she would reread them, hearing his voice in her mind as she traced his handwriting with her fingers. His work in South Africa had expanded beyond his original role. He wasn't just treating patients anymore. He was training a team of local health workers, helping establish protocols and working with the community to address underlying health issues related to water and sanitation. His emails and video calls were filled with stories of small miracles and heartbreaking challenges. Emma shared everything with him too. She told him about her students' progress, about the mug set she had completed in pottery class, about the neighborhood cat that had adopted their garden as its territory. She photographed everything. The changing seasons in their garden, new paintings she created, family gatherings he missed. In October, Sarah gave birth to her 3rd child, a healthy baby boy. Emma was there for the birth, holding Sarah's hand, wishing desperately that Thomas could be there too. When she video called him from the hospital, showing him his new grandson, Thomas cried with joy and sadness mixed together. "I hate that I'm missing these moments," he said, his face filling the small phone screen. "You're not missing them," Emma assured him. "You're just experiencing them differently. This little one will know his grandpa. We'll make sure of it." November brought the long-anticipated trip. Emma was finally going to visit Thomas in South Africa. She would stay for 3 weeks using her school holiday break. The excitement and nervousness built as the departure date approached. Sarah helped her pack, while Lucy organized everything Emma needed to have arranged at home while she was away. Michael promised to check on the house weekly. Margaret insisted she would be fine and told Emma to stop worrying about her. The journey was long and exhausting. 2 flights and a bus ride later, Emma arrived at the small village where Thomas was working. She stepped off the bus into the African heat, her eyes scanning the small crowd gathered at the dirt road that served as a bus stop. Then she saw him. Thomas stood apart from the others, thinner than she remembered, his face tanned from months in the sun but unmistakably him. Their eyes met and Emma's exhaustion vanished. She ran to him, not caring about the dust her luggage kicked up or the people watching. They collided in an embrace so tight it hurt. Thomas buried his face in her hair, breathing in her familiar scent. Emma held him with all her strength, feeling the reality of him after months of just voices and images on screens. "You're here," Thomas kept saying. "You're really here." "I'm here," Emma confirmed, pulling back just enough to look at his face. She touched his cheek, his hair, needing the physical confirmation that this wasn't a dream. The village welcomed Emma with open arms. Thomas's small house was basic, nothing like their cottage back home, but he had tried to make it comfortable for her visit. Fresh flowers sat in a jar by the window, and he had borrowed extra blankets to soften the hard mattress. That first night, they lay together in the narrow bed, tangled up in each other, talking until dawn. They had so much to say, so many small details that hadn't fit into emails or video calls. Thomas told her about the patients he had grown closest to, the children who called him Dr. Tom, the elderly woman who reminded him of Margaret. Emma described the texture of their daily life at home, the rhythms and routines he was missing. She told him about the way their bedroom smelled like his cologne even though he hadn't been there in months. She confessed how she sometimes sat two places at the table before remembering she was eating alone. The next 3 weeks were both wonderful and difficult. Emma accompanied Thomas to the clinic each day, watching him work. She saw his compassion with patients, his patience in training the local health workers, his dedication to making a real difference. She was proud beyond words, but she also saw the toll it was taking on him. The long hours in difficult conditions, the frustration when supplies ran short, or when patients arrived too late for him to help effectively. The weight of responsibility he carried. One evening, after a particularly hard day where a child had died from a preventable illness, Thomas sat outside their small house with his head in his hands. Emma sat beside him, saying nothing at first, just being present. "I should have been able to save her," he finally said. "Thomas, you can't save everyone. You're one person doing the work of 10. You're making a difference, but you can't fix everything. It doesn't feel like enough." Emma took his hand. "You know what I see when I watch you work? I see hope. Those health workers you're training, they'll help thousands of people long after you're gone. That mother whose baby you saved last week, she'll tell everyone about the doctor who cared. You're planting seeds, Thomas. Not all of them will grow in the time you're here, but many will." Her words seemed to help. Thomas squeezed her hand gratefully. Emma also spent time exploring the village on her own. She met the women who gathered to wash clothes together by the river. She watched children play with homemade toys. She visited the small school where eager students shared 2 books among 40 children. An idea formed in her mind. When she got back home, she would organize a donation drive. Books, art supplies, basic medical equipment. Her students' families, the community. Everyone could contribute. She could be part of Thomas's mission even from thousands of miles away. She shared this idea with Thomas over a simple dinner of rice and vegetables. His eyes lit up with excitement. "That would be amazing, Emma. The need is so great, and any help would make a real difference." They spent an evening making lists of what would be most useful, brainstorming how to organize it. It felt good to plan together again, to be a team working toward a common goal. The 3 weeks flew by too quickly. Their last day together, they took a walk outside the village, following a path that led to a hilltop overlooking the valley. The view was breathtaking, the landscape stretching endlessly under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. "I'm glad you came," Thomas said, holding her close as they stood watching the sunset. "These weeks with you here have reminded me why I'm doing this." "You ground me, Emma, you always have." "I'm glad I came too," Emma replied. "Now I can picture where you are, what your days are like. It will make the separation easier somehow, knowing exactly where you are and what you're doing." "Only 6 months left," Thomas said. "Half the time has already passed. I know. But these next 6 months will be hard too. Leaving you tomorrow, knowing it's another 6 months before we're home together, it's going to hurt." Thomas turned her to face him. "But we've done it. We've survived 6 months apart. We can survive 6 more. And look at us, Emma, we're still us. The distance hasn't changed what we are to each other." Emma nodded, blinking back tears. "Promise me something?" "Anything. Promise me you'll take care of yourself. Not just work yourself to exhaustion. Eat properly. Rest when you need to. I need you to come home healthy and whole." "I promise," Thomas said, "and you promise me the same. Keep painting. Keep teaching. Keep finding joy. Live your life fully. Don't just wait for me to come home. I promise." They stood on that hilltop until the stars came out, holding each other, storing up strength for the goodbye that morning would bring. The bus departure the next day was painful. Emma tried to be brave, to smile and wave as she climbed aboard. But as the bus pulled away and she watched Thomas grow smaller in the distance, she pressed her hand against the window and let tears stream down her face. The journey home felt longer than the journey there. Emma replayed every moment of her visit, holding the memories close. She looked at the hundreds of photos on her phone. Thomas at work, Thomas laughing with the village children, Thomas sleeping peacefully beside her for the first time in months. When she arrived home, the cottage felt different somehow. It was still empty without Thomas, but now she could picture him in his small house in Africa. She could imagine his daily routine, the landscape around him, the work he was doing. The physical distance remained, but the emotional distance felt smaller. Margaret came by the day after Emma returned, eager to hear about the trip. Over tea and biscuits, Emma described everything. The village, the clinic, the people, Thomas's dedication. He's exactly where he needs to be, Emma concluded. And I'm proud of him. It's hard, but it's right. And what about you? Margaret asked gently. Are you where you need to be? Emma considered the question. I think so. I'm learning that being supportive doesn't mean standing still and waiting. It means continuing to grow while he's growing too. We're on this journey together even when we're apart. The next day, Emma returned to school and immediately started organizing the donation drive for Thomas's clinic. She enlisted her students, their parents, other teachers, and the wider community. The response was overwhelming. Within weeks, they had collected boxes of books, medical supplies, toys for the village children, and funds to purchase larger equipment. Emma coordinated with a charity organization to ship everything. The final months moved with agonizing slowness and surprising speed all at once. January brought cold weather and a new term at school. February passed in a blur of Valentine's Day cards from her students and weekly video calls with Thomas that grew more excited as his return date approached. By March, Emma found herself counting not just months but weeks, then days. Thomas's mission had been extended by 2 weeks to help complete the training program he had developed. Emma understood, though those extra 14 days felt like an eternity. But she used the time productively, preparing for his return. She repainted their bedroom, the soft blue color they had always talked about but never gotten around to choosing. She planted new rose bushes in the garden. She filled the house with small improvements and surprises. The donations Emma had organized arrived in South Africa, and Thomas sent pictures of the village children with their new books, the clinic with its new equipment. The impact was visible and profound. Emma felt like she had been part of something meaningful, connected to Thomas's work even from thousands of miles away. Their children planned a welcome home celebration. Sarah offered to host it at her house so Emma and Thomas could have their first evening alone. Lucy organized the food. Michael coordinated with everyone to ensure they would all be there. Even Margaret, despite her age, insisted she would attend. The night before Thomas's return, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay in their bed staring at the ceiling, her heart racing with anticipation. Tomorrow. After 18 months and 2 weeks, tomorrow he would be home. She got up early, too restless to stay in bed. She cleaned the house even though it was already spotless. She arranged fresh flowers in every room. She made Thomas's favorite meal, a roast chicken with all the sides he loved. She changed her clothes 3 times, laughing at herself for being nervous to see her own husband. Margaret called mid-morning. How are you holding up, love? I'm a mess, Emma admitted. I feel like a teenager waiting for prom. Margaret laughed warmly. That's exactly how you should feel. Enjoy these butterflies, Emma. They're part of the joy. Thomas's flight was scheduled to land at 3 in the afternoon. Sarah had insisted on driving Emma to the airport, not wanting her mother to make the journey alone while so emotional. They arrived early, far too early. But Emma couldn't wait at home any longer. They sat in the arrivals area, watching other reunions unfold around them. Each embrace they witnessed made Emma's eyes water. Sarah held her hand, patient and understanding. The flight information board updated. Landed. Emma's heart jumped into her throat. He was here in the same city, on the same ground, breathing the same air. Soon, very soon, she would see him. The minutes ticked by slowly. Emma watched the doors where passengers emerged, her eyes scanning every face. Groups of travelers came through, wheeling luggage, talking on phones, moving with the purpose of people eager to reach their destinations. Then she saw him. Thomas appeared in the doorway, looking tired and rumpled from the long journey. He was scanning the crowd, searching for her. Emma stood up without realizing she was moving. Their eyes met across the busy terminal and everything else faded away. Emma ran. She actually ran through the airport, weaving between travelers and luggage carts, her heart pounding. Thomas dropped his bags and opened his arms. They crashed together in the middle of the arrivals hall, holding each other so tightly neither could breathe properly. Emma was crying and laughing at the same time. Thomas buried his face in her hair, repeating her name over and over like a prayer. You're home, Emma sobbed. You're really home. I'm home, Thomas confirmed, pulling back just enough to cup her face in his hands. He looked at her like he was seeing something precious and miraculous. Let me look at you. You're beautiful, Emma. You're so beautiful. They kissed right there in the middle of the crowded airport, a kiss that held 18 months of longing and love. Around them, people smiled and gave them space, recognizing the special moment they were witnessing. Sarah approached quietly, not wanting to interrupt, but needing to greet her father. When Thomas and Emma finally pulled apart, both of their faces wet with tears, Thomas turned to find his daughter waiting. "Hello, Dad," Sarah said, her own eyes brimming. "Welcome home." Thomas hugged his daughter tightly. "It's so good to see you, sweetheart. Thank you for taking care of your mum." "She took care of herself," Sarah said, smiling at Emma. "But we were there when she needed us." The drive home was filled with conversation. Thomas wanted to hear about everything, every detail of the past 18 months. Emma wanted to hear all of his stories too. They talked over each other, laughed, held hands across the car seat like teenagers. When they pulled up to their cottage, Thomas stared at it for a long moment. "I've dreamed about this place every single night," he said quietly. "Our home." Emma took his hand. "And come on, let's go inside." The cottage welcomed them back. Everything was familiar yet felt new somehow. Thomas walked through each room, touching things, remembering. He noticed the new paint in the bedroom immediately. "You did this," he said, running his hand along the wall. "Do you like it?" Emma asked, suddenly nervous. "I love it. I love everything you've done. The house feels like it's been waiting for me, just like you said it would be." They spent the afternoon just being together, relearning the rhythms of shared space. Thomas showered and changed into clean clothes. Emma made tea and they sat on the back porch, exactly where they had sat 18 months ago planning his departure. "It feels surreal," Thomas said, "like I'll wake up and find myself back in that small house in Africa." "Is part of you sad to have left?" Emma asked gently. Thomas considered the question. "Yes and no. I'm proud of what we accomplished there. The clinic is running well, the health workers are trained, the community has resources they didn't have before. But I missed this. I missed you. I missed our life together. I was where I needed to be, but this is where I want to be." That evening, they went to Sarah's house for the welcome home celebration. The whole family was there. Children and grandchildren running everywhere, hugs and laughter filling the space. Thomas held his new grandson for the first time, tears streaming down his face. He caught up with Michael and Lucy, heard about their lives, their work, their challenges over the past months. Margaret hugged Thomas for a long time. "You did good work, Thomas, but I'm glad you're home. Emma needs you, even though she learned she could manage without you." "I need her too," Thomas said, "more than I realized." The celebration was joyful and exhausting. By 9 o'clock, Emma caught Thomas's eye across the room. He nodded slightly, understanding. They were ready to go home, to be alone, to really begin their reunion. They said their goodbyes amid protests that the party was just getting started. Sarah hugged them both, understanding what they needed. "Go home," she whispered. "Be together." Back at the cottage, in the quiet of their own space, Thomas and Emma finally had time to truly reconnect. They stayed up late into the night, sharing stories, filling in gaps, rebuilding the everyday intimacy that distance had strained but not broken. The next morning, Emma woke to find Thomas already up, standing by the bedroom window looking out at the garden. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. He turned and smiled at her. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am. I got to do something important, something meaningful. But I also get to come home to this, to you, to our life together. Not everyone gets both." Emma got out of bed and joined him at the window. They looked out at the garden together, at the roses blooming, the vegetables growing, the bird feeder Thomas had hung years ago. "We're different now," Emma said. "Both of us. We've grown in different directions, had different experiences. But we're still us," Thomas said, pulling her close. "Maybe even more us than before. We chose each other again, Emma. We could have grown apart, but we didn't. The distance made us stronger." Over the following days and weeks, they readjusted to living together. It wasn't seamless. They had both developed new habits, new routines. Thomas had grown accustomed to solitude and simple living. Emma had created a life that functioned without him. They had to learn each other again in small ways, but they did it with patience and love. Thomas started working part-time at the local hospital. easing back into his old life while maintaining connections with the clinic in Africa. He planned to return for visits to check on their progress, but his mission there was complete. Emma continued her pottery classes and her art club at school. She maintained the independence she had developed, and Thomas encouraged it. They found a new balance, one that honored who they had each become during their separation while rebuilding their togetherness. One Sunday afternoon, 3 months after Thomas's return, they sat in their garden drinking tea. The early summer sun was warm, the roses were in full bloom, and they could hear children playing in a nearby yard. "Do you regret it?" Emma asked. "Going to Africa, being away for so long?" Thomas thought carefully before answering. "I regret missing time with you. I regret missing those everyday moments we can never get back. But I don't regret going. It changed me in important ways. It showed me what I was capable of, what we were capable of." "It changed me too," Emma said. "I discovered I could be strong on my own. But I also discovered that choosing to be with you isn't about weakness or need. It's about love.